Hello, I'm Doug Dykes, and I've managed projects for over 30 years. Through my years of experience, I've worked with every type of contract that we will discuss today. Although I currently work in maintenance as the district environmental and permit engineer, I previously worked in design as a consultant project manager and as a project manager for various consultants, and also for the St. Johns River Water Management District. As part of this training, we'll go over the most common contracts used by the department. Our focus will be on professional services, since this is the primary contract mechanism that most consultant project managers will deal with. It is important to know all the common contract types because some designs may have other contract types, and at some point of time in the future you may use these. An example is a professional services contract to use a professional engineering firm to design a roadway, which will eventually become a construction contract to build the roadway, and then maintenance will use its various contract types to maintain the roads. In some cases, you may not use any other contract type, but knowledge of them is important in your career at the department. Before we get into each contract type, we need to go over some basic terms that will be mentioned in this training. The first is amendment. This is where there is a change in the contract, and we use this method to document the change. District-wide is another term that we frequently use, and it's a term that where contracts cross over one or more counties. Many contracts are county-specific, and if we cross into another county, we designate the contract as district-wide. This is not to be confused with your plan set when it crosses multiple counties, one or more counties, and we call that district-wide also. In a contracting sense, district-wide contracts are similar to GC contracts. They have a broad scope, they're task work order based, generally a 3 to 5 year term. The generally discipline specific, but you could have a wider range, such as how the GEC is set up. But the discipline specific examples are geotech, survey, minor design, and safety. They're usually capped at $1.5 million. Another term that we frequently use is a push button contract. It's a task work order based contract that provides a means of quickly responding to critical highway needs such as construction. It generally has a defined scope of services with established unit prices for predetermined work items. An example is in surveying, where you have a unit price per crew day. When construction need is identified, a task work order is issued and work is completed quickly. Another term that we use quite frequently as a means of payment is lump sum. Lump sum is the method of payment for the contract where whatever is specified in the contract must be completed at that price. In this case, we pay the lump sum whether or not it takes more or less effort by the contractor. Another term that we frequently use is limiting amount. Limiting amount, this is another method of payment where whatever is specified in the contract can be accomplished for any amount to the limit of the not to exceed amount. In this case, we pay for the effort and nothing more. Supplementals. This is a contract modification to add or take away work from the contract. We've mentioned this word numerous times previously, task work order. These are individual assignments within a larger contract. An example may be a geotechnical contract that does not have specific assignments at the beginning of the contract, but task work orders are assigned as work areas are defined. So say you've got a roadway project and it needs geotechnical services, and you have a geotechnical contract, of course, then you would assign that task work order for that specific geotechnical work in your roadway project. Most task work order-based contracts are district-wide contracts. A task work order is basically a standalone project under an umbrella of a larger contract, typically used when a quick turnaround is needed. Each task work order will have its own scope of services, budget, and schedule, each which will be very well thought out and negotiated with the consultant. Task work order scope of services must be written within the overall contract work type. Example, under a district-wide geotechnical contract, a task work order cannot be executed to perform a safety analysis. Two methods of compensations for task work orders are lump sum task work orders. Invoices are paid in incremental amounts as a percentage of overall completion or as a single full amount when the services are complete. Limiting amount task orders invoices are paid per hour work based on the negotiated contract rate on the overall contract. The last term we'll talk about is time and materials. This is another method of payment where whatever is specified in the contract is paid based on the materials provided and the actual staff efforts. These time and materials are not frequently used in design contracts, but they're more used in construction and maintenance contracts. Here is a generic example of professional services task work order form. It is an interactive form available on the Forms and Procedures website. We just need to make sure to fill in the blanks as appropriate. Give extra attention to the following: the payment FM number, FIN number. On some task work order-based contracts, you may use several different FM numbers for different task work orders. When you prepare a task order amendment, the FM number used in the amendment must be the same as the one used in the original task work order. Task work order execution date. Date cannot be prior to the encumbrance approval date. Also, the consultant may not begin work prior to the task work order execution date, and we cannot request them to perform work before this date. Task order completion date. Consultant cannot work after the expiration date, and we cannot request them to perform work after this date. If the department requests for a consultant to perform work prior to execution, after expiration, or outside the contract scope of services, a settlement agreement may be necessary. Requires a lot of paperwork, justification for the request or work performed, backup documentation, and it's ultimately signed off by the secretary. You want to avoid that. Compensation element description can be pretty general. Best to put the consultant and or sub-consultant firm names. Reason being that should need for task order amendment arise, field must be identical and including punctuation to the original task work order. This is due to the way the project gets set up and sits. Method of compensation. Designate how the consultant will be paid for the work on a particular task work order. Lump sum and or limiting amount with a variety of different specific setups. Limiting amount task orders are nice because consultant will only charge the specific hours worked. It's a little more paperwork and requires attention to detail regarding verifying the work performed, but this is the best way to set up an assignment. They don't have a clearly defined scope. This slide provides an example of professional services. Lump sum task work order invoice might look like this. One lump sum option is LS1, lump sum paid at completion. This particular task work order was set up as lump sum 2, paid in incremental based on percentage complete. This slide shows what a limiting amount task order invoice might look like. job classification at specific hourly rates shown here. These rates are specific to the contract, so you should verify these values match what your contract says. The loaded total is simply the hourly rate times the number of hours charged times the multiplier for the contract. Florida Statute Section 287.055, the Consultants Competitive Negotiation Act, requires procurement of professional services by a competitive negotiation. Many types of professional service contracts are listed on the slide. The keys to why these are considered professional services is that they are required either as a professional engineer, architect, planner, or landscape architect to sign and seal the product that we're being produced. We'll quickly go through some of the typical professional services contract. Engineering. This is usually for services like roadway design, drainage, and structures. Architectural. Yes, we have architectural designs like the building that you're working from. Other architectural projects include rest areas, welcome centers, and renovations. Survey and mapping. These contracts usually supplement our in-house survey and mapping crews. Landscape architecture. The landscaping that you see on our roadways and at our facilities requires designs from landscape architects. Planning. This contract is usually used for long-term planning of future capacity projects. PD&E. This contract is for project development and environment studies that are required on all federally funded larger projects and is also a tool to keep the locals informed of upcoming projects. This is an excellent tool for getting buy-in from locals on the project. Geotechnical and materials. These contracts usually supplement our in-house geotechnical and materials crews. Bridge inspection. When the bridge inspection requires the certification of a professional engineer, most do, then we proceed with obtaining this contract. CEI. This is for the construction engineering and inspection for projects that have moved into the construction phase. This is the support staff that will manage the construction contract. Traffic operations. Many traffic studies and intersection designs require the design or studies be signed and sealed by a professional engineer. Utilities. This contract is usually used to supplement our in-house staff in the review of utilities during the design of a project. And finally, the big one, General Engineering Consulting Contract, GC. Typically, it has a very broad scope and can encompass a variety of different assignments on an as-needed basis. This is accomplished by task work order and generally a 3 to 5 year term. Commodities and contractual services. This category of contract includes the goods that are necessary for daily function of the department and the non-professional service contracts. Let's go over these common items briefly. Supplies are the pens, papers, and other widgets you need on a daily basis. Materials are generally the products that are used to maintain our roadways, such as borrow material, asphalt, stone, to name a few. Goods are similar to materials, but we define these more specifically to items that are on the approved products list. Examples include lights, delineators, guardrails, and many others. Merchandise. This is usually items we purchase to advertise the department. Examples are shirts, stickers, and awards. Equipment. This includes not only the light and heavy equipment we use on daily operations, but also other equipment such as generators and pumps. IT consulting services is a non-professional service that our OIT uses to help them manage our IT system. Management consultant is also a non-professional service that we use to evaluate the management of the department and also help in training, such as a management academy. Environmental service is another non-professional service that is usually used by the environmental group to supplement in-house staff. And finally, temporary staffing is a mechanism to temporarily bring in staff to supplement in-house staff when the GEC is not an option. Construction. If you're a project manager in the design section, your work is not finished when the project is handed off to construction. You will be involved during construction for the review of design changes, shop drawings, and potential conflict resolution. And sometimes there are errors in the design that need to be resolved. So you and your consultant will still be there to help resolve those. It's important during design to know how construction will be contracted. This sets up how your plans will be put together. Construction utilizes primarily two forms of contracts, construction and CEI. CEI contracts are procured under the professional services since it requires a professional engineer. And we discussed that earlier. The construction contracts over $250,000 requires the contractor to be pre-qualified. The Department Contracts Administration Office advertises and awards federally funded road and bridge construction contracts. Central Office does that. State-funded contracts and all maintenance contracts are advertised and awarded by the District Contract Administration Office. Typical construction projects are known as design, bid, build. This is what we're generally used to, and generally these are lump sum projects. Lump sum bidding technique is designed to reduce quantity overruns as well as the costs associated with contracts. Administration. It allows CEI personnel to spend more time on the inspection, getting the job right, and less time on all the paperwork that the department has. Consultant project managers need to make sure they keep the designer on board by issuing an addendum or a supplemental to the design contract for the work the design consultant will do during the construction phase. As I mentioned before, we don't let the consultant go after the project goes to construction. They're still on board and they will be a vital resource to you to get the construction project to completion. Maintenance contracts. This is the area that I currently work in and very familiar with all of the different maintenance type of contracts that I work with now. In order to maintain the department's assets, we heavily rely on contractors. 90% of the department's grass is mowed with contract support. Another large maintenance contract is the entire maintenance of roadways and facilities such as rest areas and weigh and motion station by asset maintenance contractors. The contracts are generally 7 to 10 years long and include general engineering support. No, these are not advertised under professional services. These are advertised as an asset type of contract. Some of the maintenance contracts are performed based on lump sum or time and materials. Performance-based is a payment system that is based on maintenance rating performance, MRP scores, and the asset maintenance contractor's performance evaluation, AMPER. The maintenance rating performance, MRP, is done on a quarterly basis, so segments of roadway within the asset management territory is rated by the MRP manual, which provides specific guidance on how that roadway is being maintained. And the amper is the rest of the contract. How is it being managed? How is the public being afforded when they complain about a pothole? Are they quickly responding to them, or are there arguments between our project manager and the AM contractor project manager? Sometimes emergencies occur that are not declared by the governor or the secretary. When that occurs, maintenance uses fast response contracts that enables the department to correct problems quickly while still complying with the administrative requirements. These are usually used for bridge hits, sinkholes, localized damage from natural and man-made hazards. Um, we use these frequently when these occurrences happen, but it's all based on funding. So if funds are available, then we can use that contract. Otherwise, we may have to pull together in-house forces to try to correct something. General maintenance contracts include sidewalk repair, small paving jobs, signs and lighting replacement, and other daily operation. Lighting is generally handled through our AM contracts or through local government contracts. In some cases, lighting contracts are issued through district contracts, and it's rare that we maintain our lights. Like I said before, our AM contractors maintain them, or our local governments. The electric authorities do not maintain our systems. Our agreements are only with the local governments. Traffic operation contracts are to manage the signals and special signs are manually handled through the local governments also. In some occasions, the districts may have our own contract to maintain signals and signs. We do also have landscape contracts, and it's usually handled through AM contracts or through contracts with local governments or private entities. Design build combines into a single contract the design and the construction for projects, all in accordance with standard FDOT criteria, if applicable, specifications, if applicable, and contract administration practices. Two of them I mentioned, if applicable, if it's roadway design or bridge design. Typically, we have standards and specifications for that. When we get into building design and we use design build contracts, then we find ourselves using other specifications and standards to design that building. These projects will allow the contractor to participate in the design in an effort to reduce cost and expedite construction times. Construction management at risk. Construction management at risk may be defined as an integrated team approach applying modern management techniques to planning, design, and construction of projects in order to control time, cost, and assure quality for the project owner. The team consists of the owner, the architect engineer, and the construction manager. Construction at risk includes pre-construction and construction services. The CM, or construction management team, is selected about the same time as the architect and his role as owner's agent. Their task is to represent the interests of the owner in all phases of the project. The construction manager is selected using a standard consultant selection process. The construction manager performs value engineering or construction ability reviews for the owner during the pre-construction phase. Pre-construction services included in construction management, cost estimating, and budget recommendations, which may play a major role in the cost containment and requires construction managers to review of the contract document preparations for construction ability. The owner still has a complete approval of all changes or design decisions. The construction manager, using the budget of the owner, provides suggestions for alternatives for the design, construction materials, and process. Their experience and skill provides a clearer picture to the owner of the cost of the different alternatives, methods, and materials. About 50% contract document phase, the construction manager submits a guaranteed maximum price for acceptance to the owner. The construction manager warrants to the owner that the project will be built at the price not to exceed the guaranteed maximum price. The construction manager assumes the risk of meeting the guaranteed maximum price by holding all of their subcontractors to the work that's being done. Yes, we use contracts to evaluate our products. Transportation-related manufactured products are introduced to the department from a variety of sources. Identified maintenance of traffic devices, traffic operation equipment, hardware, and manufactured products related to transportation are processed through the product evaluation section of the Program Management Office. It establishes the process used for the initial submittal, introduction, review, and evaluation of these products. For products requiring pre-approval by the department, this procedure also establishes the process used to create and maintain an APL, approved product list, which includes criteria applicable to requalification and removal of the device. The product evaluation section acts as a coordinator and provides guidance for those seeking to introduce manufactured products to the department. Based on initial information received from the manufacturer, the product evaluation section determines which process is appropriate for a particular product by acting as a liaison with the technical experts, usually consultants, in the department offices, with the appropriate technical expertise that facilitates the evaluation of the product. If multiple offices are involved, the product evaluation section coordinates the multiple reviews. These evaluations are through contracts with manufacturers. Leases, we typically don't think of as contracts, but they are legal contracts with the participant that is wanting to lease our property. The department often has properties that are currently not being used. These properties can be leased to the public or private entities. In most cases, these entities make the request through the right-of-way office. So why are we bringing this up in the training? It's to make you aware of this type of contract, but also to make you sure you investigate the parcel when working on the project. A lease might exist on the parcel, and you might intend on using. The lease can be modified for your project, but you must be aware of the lease before moving forward. You probably ask yourself, during these past hurricanes, how did the department react so quickly? Well, we have emergency contracts in place. The department has several types of contracts that have been put in place in case of hurricanes or other emergencies. These contracts include but are not limited to cut and toss, emergency fuel, traffic signal repair, debris removal, generator installation, and sign repair. These pre-event contracts are known as Z contracts. After the event is passed, contracts under the emergency declaration can be executed to complete the work to repair the damages. The process to procure services from contractors and consultants can be deviated from the normal selection process if it is a declared emergency. Emergency contracts can be responses to hurricanes, fires, tornadoes, winter weather events, bridge hits, or other events declared by the governor or the department secretary. The last contract type that we're going to discuss is a public-private partnership, also known as P3. It is a contractual agreement between a public agency, federal, state, or local, and a private sector entity. Through this agreement, the skills and assets of the public agency and the private sector entity are shared in delivering a service or facility for the use by the general public. In addition to sharing of resources, each party shares in the risk and reward potential in the delivery of the service or facility. Section 334.30 of the Florida statute authorizes the department to enter into P3 agreements for building, operations, ownership, and financing of transportation facilities. In summary, as a project manager, you may be involved in a number of contracting mechanisms. It's important to know what type of contract to use for a specific project that you're working on. Knowledge is the key in making you a successful project manager. Mismanagement of a contract could lead to some severe consequences for your career. So knowing your contract inside and out is very important. They also could have legal ramifications, both to the department or to the contractor that you're working with. So let's try to stay out of courts. And as you gain more experience working with contracts, you'll learn the ins and outs of each of the contracts. As you learn these nuances of your contracts, please share those nuances with your coworkers so that they gain a better perspective of how to better manage their contract.